Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we get you fluent in the world's most compelling research.
Hmm.
Today, we're digging into something really foundational, leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, we're looking at the very first formal way people tried to understand leaders, the classic trait approach.
Right, and it tackles that age-old question, doesn't it? Are leaders just, born different? Or is it something you learn?
Exactly, that core question.
The trait approach, well, in its earliest form, it basically said leaders are different. It was this, quest to find a universal list of traits.
The secret recipe.
Sort of, yeah.
Oh.
The characteristics that just set leaders apart, things like intelligence, self-confidence, determination, the usual suspects.
Okay, but you said earliest form. So what was the problem with just looking for this fixed list?
Well, the big issue was seeing leadership purely as something in the person, a property they possessed. For this whole discussion, we're using the definition from our source material, which is key. It says leadership is a process.
A process. How so?
It's about how one individual influences a group, to achieve a common goal.
Right. So it's not just about having traits, but about the interaction.
Precisely. The old trait view is like, you've got it or you don't. Fixed.
Stuck with it.
Yeah. But the process view says leadership is about observable behaviors. It's something that theoretically anyone can do. It's an interaction.
That feels much more dynamic.
It is.
Yeah.
But, to really get the whole picture, we have to start where the field started hunting for that right stuff.
Okay, let's dive into that hunt.
Nah.
You had researchers, Kirkpatrick and Locke, back in '91.
Mm-hmm.
They flat out said leaders are not like other people. That sounds pretty definitive.
Mm-hmm.
What did they pinpoint as this essential right stuff?
They really tried to synthesize things and landed on 6 key traits. They argued leaders need drive, first off.
Okay. High energy, ambition.
Exactly. Then motivation, the desire to actually lead. Integrity was crucial. Confidence, of course.
Can't lead if you don't believe you can.
Right. Then cognitive ability, being smart enough to handle complexity. And finally, task knowledge. You need to know what you're talking about.
So drive, motivation, integrity, confidence, smarts, and knowing the job. That's their list.
That was their synthesis, yeah. Whether you were born with them or developed them, they saw these as essential.
Okay, so that's Kirkpatrick and Locke's take. But if you look across loads of studies over the years, did the list get refined? Did certain traits keep popping up?
Absolutely. Things sort of crystallized around 5 major leadership traits that consistently emerged.
The big 5 of leadership traits.
You could say that. Intelligence is always there. Self-confidence, determination, integrity, and sociability. Those 5 show up again and again.
Interesting. And how does this connect to the big 5 personality model, the FFM?
Good question. There's a definite link. When you map leadership onto the big 5...
Which are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism.
Exactly. Extroversion comes out top.
Yeah.
By far the strongest link to leadership.
Why extrovert?
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? Leaders need to be outgoing, assertive, energetic, connect with people.
Sure. Proactive.
Right. After extroversion, you see conscientiousness being dependable, organized, persistent, and openness then curious, creative, insightful.
Okay, so those 3 are positively linked. What about the other 2? Agreeableness and neuroticism.
Well, leaders tend to score lower on neuroticism.
Meaning more emotionally stable,
Yeah,
less anxious.
exactly. Calm under pressure. That's vital for trust, especially when things get tough. Agreeableness is interesting. It's less strongly linked.
Really? You'd think being agreeable helps.
You would, but sometimes being too agreeable means you can't make tough calls, Prioritizing harmony over the actual goal. So a moderate level seems best.
Okay. So the big 5 gives us another lens. Let's double click on one of those core 5 traits you mentioned. Intelligence. Because I gather there's a twist here. It's not just smarter is always better.
Not at all. It's
Yeah.
a bit of a paradox, actually. Yes, generally, being intelligent helps. Leaders need strong verbal skills, perceptual abilities, reasoning.
To solve problems, make sense of things.
Right. But, and this is the fascinating part, if a leader's IQ is too high compared to their followers, it can actually backfire.
Wait, really? Too smart to lead effectively. How does that work?
It's what researchers like Antonakis, House, and Sementon found. They called it a curvilinear relationship.
Curvilinear. Okay, like a curve.
Exactly. Think of a graph. As IQ goes up, perceived leadership effectiveness also goes up, but only to a certain point.
And then?
And then it starts to drop off. There's a sweet spot.
What's the sweet spot? How much smarter should the leader be?
The research suggests the peak is just over 1 standard deviation above the average IQ of the group they're leading.
Only 1 standard deviation? That's not that much higher.
Right. If the leader's IQ goes much beyond that, their effectiveness, as perceived by the followers, starts to decline.
Wow. Why? What happens when the IQ gap gets too big?
It becomes a communication problem, essentially.
Right.
If the leader is just operating on a completely different intellectual level, they might struggle to explain their ideas in a way the group understands or accepts.
Their vision might seem too abstract, too complicated.
Precisely. They can seem out of touch, unrelatable. And if you can't communicate effectively, you can't influence people towards that common goal.
So you need to be smart enough, but not so smart you leave everyone behind.
That's the gist of it. Smart enough to solve problems, but close enough to connect.
Okay, that intelligence paradox is really interesting. So if fixed traits like IQ have these complexities, what about skills we can actually develop? That leads us to emotional intelligence, EI.
Yes, EI.
Yeah.
Which has become huge in leadership development.
How are we defining EI here?
The classic definition from Mayer, Solovey, and Caruso is basically about understanding and managing emotions your own and other people's, perceiving them, using them, understanding them effectively.
And the key difference here compared to, say, IQ is?
The key difference is that EI doesn't seem to be a fixed trait in the same way. There's pretty strong evidence that it's a skill set.
Meaning it can be learned, improved.
Absolutely. It can be developed through training and practice. This is where the trait idea starts to blend more with the process idea developing leadership behaviors.
Okay, now we're definitely talking about leaders being made, not just born. Do we have solid proof that EI training actually works? Does it make better leaders?
We do, actually. There's good evidence. For example, one experiment by Slasky and Cartwright.
What did they find?
They trained a group of leaders in EI skills, and they found real improvements in their competencies. And crucially, this led to better workplace outcomes.
Like what?
Like lower stress reported by their staff, higher team morale, and even improved civility in the workplace. Tangible benefits.
That's significant. Lower stress, better morale. That hits the bottom line.
For sure. And it's not just isolated studies. Meta-analyses looking across many studies support a decent positive effect for EI training. It works.
So organizations are actually doing this.
Oh, definitely. Big companies like FedEx, for instance, use EI training for their new managers. They recognize these relational skills are just as vital as the technical ones.
Right. So EI is a trainable trait, if you will. How does all this, the core traits, the big five, EI get used in practice by organizations today?
Well, the trait approach, even with its limitations, provides a really useful framework. It gives benchmarks for what to look for.
For hiring.
Yes, very much for selection. Companies use personality tests all the time to screen candidates. If you know, say, that conscientiousness and extroversion predict success in a sales role.
You screen for those traits.
Exactly. It helps target recruitment, but it's not just for hiring.
Also for development.
Hmm?
For current leaders.
Definitely. Managers can use trait assessments not as some final judgment, but as a tool for self-awareness.
To see their strengths and weaknesses.
Right. To identify areas like maybe low determination, or perhaps they need to work on their sociability, their EI. It provides a map for personal development to become more effective.
Okay, let's try and bring all these threads together. Drive, confidence, intelligence, EI, the potential downsides. Maybe looking at a real-world example helps. What about someone like Elon Musk? His traits seem very visible.
Musk is a fascinating, almost extreme example when viewed through the trait lens.
How so?
Well, look at the traits from the source material. Drive, immense. Confidence, off the charts. Motivation to influence, clearly very high.
He has that philosophy at SpaceX, right? Leaders work harder than their teams.
Exactly. That's pure drive and determination in action. And he articulates these huge, bold visions, interplanetary life, revolutionizing transport. That's influence rooted in personal conviction.
Very trait-driven. And we saw that determination during the Tesla Model 3 production issues, didn't we?
Absolutely. That was a crisis moment,
Yeah.
his response. He personally took over engineering, famously started sleeping at the factory.
Extreme measures.
Extreme determination and confidence leading to success against, frankly, staggering odds. Textbook example of certain traits achieving results.
But, and this seems crucial, those same traits, that extreme confidence and drive, can they also be liabilities?
Ah, yes. And that's the inherent complexity, the critique of relying only on traits. They don't operate in a vacuum.
Like the situation in 2018.
Exactly. The tweet about taking Tesla private, funding secured, That came across as highly confident, maybe impulsive.
And it led to big problems. SEC fines, investor backlash.
Right. It shows how a trait like high confidence, maybe combined with stress or poor situational judgment, can lead to really negative outcomes. The trait that helps in one context can hurt in another.
So the Musk example really highlights both the power and the potential pitfalls of strong leadership traits.
It does. It helps summarize the main point, really. The trait approach is valuable. It helps us identify important leadership attributes. It gives us something to aim for.
Benchmarks?
Right. But we can't see traits as destiny. They interact with the situation with followers, and importantly, many can be developed.
That interaction with the situation seems key for where research is now. Personality might predict who emerges as a leader. But understanding their actual performance requires looking at context, right?
Yeah.
Like the organization's culture, the team, the specific challenge.
Absolutely. You need the whole picture. Traits don't operate in isolation.
So, wrapping this up, the trait approach gives us a foundation, identifies key ingredients, but it's not the whole story.
Not the whole story, but an essential chapter. And it leads us to a really interesting final thought for you, our listeners.
Okay, leave us with something to chew on.
Well, if these core leadership qualities, we've talked about things like drive, determination, even emotional intelligence, if research now strongly suggests these can be learned, trained, developed, does that mean that whole centuries-old debate about leaders being born versus made is kind of over, or at least fundamentally changed?
If the key traits aren't fixed, what is fixed anymore? Is there any core leadership trait left that you're simply born with and can't change?
Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. We'll leave it there for this deep dive. Catch you next time.